It reminds me, you know, we used to tell people how amazingly funny we were. But then we decided, why not just be funny?
Why not?
And let them, let them figure it out for themselves.
Exactly.
Because that way you're kind of, you're not looking down to the audience.
Right.
You're not thinking they're so dumb, you got to tell them.
Right. They
know?
lift them up.
Kind of respect the viewers.
Right, exactly.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
And people, well,
they obviously enjoy it.
We always get the claps.
Yeah.
Wherever we go, we get the claps.
You might. I don't.
No.
Everybody else doesn't, but besides the point.
You don't get a hand?
Oh, your hand. I thought you were talking about something else.
No. We hardly ever get STDs.
Do you get the clap in the afternoon?
Speaking of STDs, though.
STDs?
Yes.
Sexually transmitted desires?
Yeah, and also
no,
the initials.
STDs.
It's also the initials for a new Star Trek series, Star Trek Discovery.
I heard.
Which is on, and one of our friends out there, and quite a lot of his friends,
right,
and mine too.
Yes.
In that community, the Star Trek, it's where the sort of Trekkie fans are. We grew up with it.
Very, very.
I love Star Trek.
Yeah, it's even from a non-scientific, non-Star Trekky type of individual like myself, I still enjoy the series. I like when they stick to more of the traditional themes and also the actual characters, because being around for so long, Roddenberry would be turning over in his grave right now if he saw the new stuff.
You tell him, Tim. You tell him.
Which I think is actually crack.
Oh, there you, Tim. Holy shit. Tim has spoken.
Very,
Ladies
very
and gentlemen.
bad type of arrangement. Even is the family of Roddenberry getting credits for this, or is it somebody else?
Well, actually, his son is supposed to be one of the co-producers, but I can't imagine he's really got that much influence. I can remember as a kid sitting in the high chair and being, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old,
right,
and watching Star Trek with my dad, not really understanding it, but watching it.
But you get the whole general feel of it because it's all based on adventure. It wasn't so much that it was a scientific show when you think about it. It's actually based on adventure with some scientific sort of stuff that you really have to think about.
Precisely my point, sir.
Exactly.
See, this is one reason I like having my pipe here, because I can gesture with my pipe and make sort of professorial type
observations,
academic type things, like yes.
Because if you think about
well
it,
said, Del Timbo.
If you think about it, all these scientific shows, which really are successful, are based on some sort of adventure deal.
Right. That's where they did. Star Trek was actually pretty clever. Roddenberry was pretty clever.
Roddenberry, yeah.
Because, he got away with the first interracial kiss.
Right, yeah.
Which, of course, nowadays seems
my God, we can't be doing that, dear.
Nowadays seems like nothing. People are virtually having sex on regular TV. But back then, you didn't see that shit.
No.
Not only did they have that, but they had a black character who was not a servant.
Yes.
Or some dumb comedy relief person. She was a serious
subservient type person.
Right. She was an officer. She was one of the crew. She was an officer, and she was a trained technical person whose job was communications. So she obviously
she was in charge.
Yeah, she was in charge of that shit, and she spoke very well. She was obviously highly trained.
She was very authoritative. Very good.
And then you got people from other planets, but you also had the Asians and the Russians.
Yeah.
Roddenberry loved to do stuff like that because his thought was in the future, things will be better.
This is the way it's going to be.
People won't be such horrible bigots and racists.
Right,
like
yeah.
that. Of course, it'd be a really boring future if there weren't a few bad guys, so they had a few, But a lot of people don't like the new Star Trek Discovery because it seems to veer too much away from canon. And a lot of people go... talk about canon, and the same kind of people are protective of Star Wars,
Right.
Now, the truth is, really, they've always kind of fudged the canon a little bit.
They moved it a little bit all the time. But the whole deal is you have to have some sort of basis in adventure.
Ladies and gentlemen, El Timbo.
If you don't have a basis in adventure, I don't care what your show is, every single show, every TV show has to have some basis in adventure. Otherwise, the people watching the show can't relate to it.
Well, yeah, adventure's important.
That
But
has a
one
lot
of the
to do
things
with
that
it.
Star Trek has always been big about is trying to. They don't go out of their way to bang you over the head with explanation because that slows the storytelling down.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
If you had to get a complete explanation of how everything works,
You'd be
all the
there for
time.
3 hours.
Yeah, but they sneak it in. And for the people like me, there is the Star Trek Technical Manual, which actually has all this shit
Right,
written down.
yeah.
Because the thing is, they've actually kind of thought about it. And they stick to that idea.
Right.
Some little changes happen. But most of the times, if it's a good adventure story, you're
It's-
willing to overlook these
right.
little things.
Exactly.
But some of the things with the new show,
It's too.
It's-
It's far out.
you know, it's really just not that entertaining. Like the main character, she starts out her career. Well, it doesn't start her career out,
Yeah.
but the story starts out with her committing
Murder.
mutiny
Oh.
because she thinks she knows better than her captain, and she basically starts a war. So I mean, it's sort of not in line with Star Trek's ideals that the future's a little better, that most people are working toward better
Some greater
goals.
good.
Not everybody, of course.
Right.
But it just doesn't seem like Star Trek. And then there's other technical things like they have this new drive that's better than warp drive, and it's based on these mushrooms.
Oh, well, there you have it, folks. They're doing mushrooms.
It's really stupid. Yeah, exactly. Shroom drive. And of course, everybody's making fun of it.
It's the shroom drive.
And you can't blame them.
Yeah, they're all. I can see it now. They've got the control room. They're all sitting around, all the powers that be. They're all doing mushrooms in the morning. Well, what do you say, guys? Do we do the whippity dippy mushrooms, or we do the drone mushrooms, and we all get high, and then we go?
Have it your way. A lot of my friends online, like Doomcock,
Right.
who you know. Well, you
Yes.
don't know him, but
I
you
know
know
you're talking
of
about it, sure.
Yeah.
They're
Him
all
and his buddy Harvey Cthulhu, they're very critical of the new Star Trek, and I agree with them mostly. You know, I agree with it. And also, there is the new Twilight Zone,
right. Heard
where they're
about that.
redoing the old episodes,
Yeah,
but
but
they're weird.
you see, the old episodes were done very, very precisely. They were black and white.
Rod Serling was
Yes.
a freaking. I used to call him Sterling, but it's
Yeah.
actually Serling. But he was a freaking genius.
The whole
Apparently.
point, the way they did those, was all cut and dry.
Mm.
There was all black and white. This is right, this is wrong. 1935, Mr. Jones caused a problem. He was an insurance agent, but he wasn't sure about the black holes on the other side of his fence. It was
So,
all like that type of stuff. All very
Right.
cut and dry, all very precise,
So-
all very unique in the way that they approached. And now, of course, it's way too futuristic nonsense because everything goes back to the way that it was done years ago.
you know, there's a lot of the young people that like this stuff. They say, "Oh, well, if you don't like this, you're either like
Too old.
you're prejudiced and stuff."
Yeah.
Because you're not used to seeing diversity in Star Trek. But that's not true because Star Trek's always had diversity.
Star Trek
The
was
Asians, the Russians,
Yeah.
you know, the black woman.
right.
And they weren't like token Asians. They were regular parts of the crew, you know? Nobody went up to them and said, "Can I get your opinion about this Asian thing you want to know about?" They acted like it
It
was,
was
the
just
normal.
the way it was.
Everybody was
Yes.
just everybody. It was people.
That's the way it ought to be.
So, you know, that was what Roddenberry's deal was from the beginning. And he got away with a lot of stuff because he couched it in the future on another
Right.
planet, for instance. But he
Right.
explored things like the Vietnam War,
Right.
The Civil War, you know, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but the
And,
whole thing
he
about
got
it.
away with it.
Yeah, but the whole thing about it was it wasn't controversial. It wasn't, oh my God, what are they doing? Now they're like, oh, can't do that. Oh, Jesus. Give it a break,
The
dude.
times they are a shanging, as
Yes.
Steve Martin says.
Yes.